So let's open it up to the panel. Do you want to go down and introduce yourselves and say what you guys do?
Great. Hey everyone, my name's Liam. I'm from a company called Digital Detox. We're based down in Brixton. I hope you can see me at the back. I feel like I'm going quite low here. So we are a people-focused or people-centred digital agency. Our product design has always got users at the centre of everything we do from a design and development point of view. But more importantly for today, we put people at the centre of our organisation. So happy teams, happy clients, that's the kind of thing that we kind of have as our mantra. And generally we try and put the people who work for our company and the founders included, sort of that their well-being, employee well-being is really paramount to the success of what we've done over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. So really excited to be here. Mental health is a really interesting topic and hoping to learn something as well from the other panellists here as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi everybody, I am Christina, co-founder of WeAre360, which is a performance training service for founders. So we often work with accelerators and incubators and VCs to help founders operate at their peak performance. And part of that is very much around mental health and well-being, but also the kind of the executional side. So we talk about from a clinical perspective, because we're all about being data-driven, and that's how our team is based, being able to build out resilience, performance, productivity, goal setting, all that aspect, and the services that go out with that. So we partner with different institutions.
Hi everyone, I'm Keji, the staffer, and I'm head of network and operations at Connect Ventures. Connect is a seed stage pan-European fund based here in London, and we invest across Europe, and we back product founders. So by product founders, we back founders who are purpose-driven and they're trying to solve hard problems at scale using product to do so, and ultimately trying to build these awesome products that are made with love and loved by many. And I have the awesome role at Connect of thinking about how we add value to our portfolio companies post-investment, and a lot of the work I'm spending my time doing is thinking about how we help them transition from great founders to great leaders. So a lot of work on the leadership development. Most founders are first-time founders, also quite young. So it's really helping them think about that, and also their founder well-being, because at seed stage, if something happens to the founder, if they burn out, the company's very much tied in with them. So it's helping them really understand that they need to prioritize their well-being as well, and think about the company building journey as a marathon, not a sprint.
Hello, I'm Taz, I'm co-founder of StateZero Labs. So as Emma beautifully put, we are an accelerator and an investor, and we are currently focused solely on blockchain technology for business. But on top of all of that, what we're actually looking to do is to try to bridge the gap between humanity and tech. And so we've built that into our program with our strong focus on founder first and wellness. So we give cash up front to our startups without taking any equity, so that we can level the playing field with them, and hopefully start to see some more diversity in founders, because actually we don't need to be sat on hundreds of thousands of pounds to launch your business. And then we also have our wellness initiative, where we do yoga sessions, PT classes, meditation. We bring in a nutritionist, because we fundamentally believe, as tonight's titles, that a healthy founder equals a healthy business. So we are trying to change that conversation in the ecosystem.
Very good.
Can
I sign up? Yeah. My name's Dan Kirby, and I'm an entrepreneur. I guess I've never taken any funding, apart from the bank in 2001. That was about £3,000. Yes, I have to build companies by creating value and selling and getting money in return. And I've been doing that since 2001. Originally I had a branding company which I sold in 2008, and then I've got a tech company which I'm the CEO of now, and we help companies improve by improving their technology. So for example, we built BBC Children in Needs fundraising platform, and we optimise that with technology and get them to make more money, which is great. And then I'm now a social entrepreneur. I'm a dirty capitalist. But I also now am a social entrepreneur, so I've got some kudos to get into heaven. And then, so I've just set up a venture called Get Ahead. And Get Ahead is an initiative to help people get on in their lives without burning out. Because that's what's happened to me, and it happened to me because I was successful. So I got all the things that you're promised. Foreign holidays, nice house, all that shit. And then and that was about 15 years ago. I was about in my early 30s. So I went to Ibiza and I came back with pneumonia. And it was a very good night out, but I had a 10-year hangover of limping through, learning, I guess, about wellness and well-being. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with depression. And that was a big relief, actually. But the point is, I built a big company that's successful with burnout and depression, and I've got 3 daughters and blah, blah, blah. But the whole point of Get Ahead is to how to help people like yourselves, or anybody else for that matter, not have the experience I had and just have the nice bit, you know? And so we launched a new, so my co-founders are here, so please put your hands up. Dillock, my good pal, and Jenny, put your hands up. And last year we set out with a 25-year commitment to positively impact 1 billion people around the world. And we launched with a 24-hour event in London on June 13th during London Tech Week, and it went from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. And 1,000 people showed up, which was kind of amazing. And we're back again on June 14th, Friday, which is a better day to have a 24-hour festival. Just saying. So yes, we're back again. So that's my spiel.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, first question, sort of more generally, Dan, as you just said, this has been a long time coming, really. The conversations surrounding founders and their mental health really should have been done a long time ago. But for me, certainly, I was trying to find events a bit like this one around 6 months ago, and even then I couldn't really find too much out there. So why do you guys think that the conversation is so focused now on this subject? Because it seems, in the press, people really do seem to be talking about mental health awareness in startups. So Christina, why don't you start? Why do you think that is? You're obviously doing your job very well at the 360.
Yeah, press helps, but I do think there is an aspect of media attention. So we have to look at the wider world that we are now becoming better at talking about mental health. Not as, oh no, mental health, but mental health. We all have it. And that conversation is starting in the wider world. And then I guess people like sat around this table are then going, okay, so that's great, but if we have 60% of employees in employment, so not people here, but people in employment are identifying with one or more mental health symptoms that we would all identify as mental health symptoms, that's epidemic levels, that's the wider world. And then you come and compare that, and that's my hypothesis, compare entrepreneurs on that, and it's 95.3. So this is why we're talking about it, and this is how we can talk about it. But you're right, 6 months ago, nothing. So I got PTSD, a bit like you. I stopped and then fell off a cliff. I got PTSD from running a tech startup at an insane tempo for 2 years, and various different things happened along the way, and a successful, like you, award-winning business. And your body just can't cope, can't do it. And there was no support. And even me and my co-founder, he ended up with depression on doctor drugs. Just to be really clear. And I sought different ways, but even we struggled to talk to each other about it. And we've been working together for 6 years and had such a strong relationship, and even we couldn't admit to each other that we had a problem. This is the kind of level that we're talking about. But in 6 months, we've seen such a phenomenal change. But it can only happen when the wider world is shifting, and then people like us can come in and say, right, okay, let's make that happen in business, and that's why we're here.
Very true. Anybody else?
It seems to me that the wider world has changed in terms of its openness about talking about mental health and well-being, and the startups and business is part of that, and I think that's why it's become okay to talk about it. But I think particularly with startups is that this is the flip side of the narrative that I think most, or a lot of startup founders have swallowed, which is like you watch the film The Social Network and you think that's the template for how my career is going to be. I'm going to set up a world-beating company, become a billionaire, do shots and probably, and by the time I'm 30, David Fincher's making a film about me. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Because there's an ambient sort of expectation, that's what happens. So you throw yourself into your startup, which you need to do. You have to. I'm in the process of that now with Get Ahead. It's a startup. And you have to really commit and throw yourself in. But there is a line, right, which is an invisible line that's only relevant, only known to you. And this is why you need to take your health seriously, because you can fuck it up really easily, which is what I did. Right? And that line, you have to listen to your body and respect that, because maybe you can't crush it like Gary Vaynerchuk says you should do till 2 a.m. smashing it out. Yeah, because that's a sort of some people can. Maybe Gary Vaynerchuk can, but most people can't. Right? And if you throw yourself at your job or your startup in the way that's unsustainable, if you conk out, there's no more company, and you lose your relationships, and maybe you don't have kids, and bad things happen, right? Really bad things, like losing a startup's like no big deal, right? Losing your health, what's the point of life, And so I think this is the dark side of the social network movie. Mark Zuckerberg, great, good for him. But the flip of that kind of commitment and work and crushing it and staying up late and doing all the parties and all that and getting funded is this stuff. And I think that story hasn't been told. So there's a I think it's the right time, for whatever reason now it's happening, and that's a good thing.
I think the tech ecosystem is starting to wake up to the fact that we are also human. It doesn't matter how crazy the technology is that you're building or whatever problem that you're trying to solve, there's still people that are building that. And I think from what you guys have said really well is that the wider world seems to be doing that in a much better way than the tech world is, and we are now starting to wake up to actually how do we make a change within our ecosystem too, because it is so rife for failure, actually. But that we don't just focus on mental health being a label, but actually it's also the times when you're speaking at an event and you might be shitting yourself about it, for instance. That is part of mental health, because that can make you feel crap, and that's okay, and to be able to say that. Or for instance, on Thursday, I had absolutely no idea what was wrong with me, but somebody in the audience asked me if I was okay, and I burst into tears.
Really?
I have no idea why. She was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know, nothing's happened. But actually to be able to have that conversation and for me to sit here confidently and say that to a room of people, I think is important and should hopefully inspire more people to talk like that. And that's where I think we're starting to hopefully head.
Absolutely, yeah. And I wonder if time is a big factor as well, because we talk about kind of this being the fallout of a generation who have been part of the social network generation and have really burnt out. They are now becoming the founders or whatever and are having teams, and then with it beginning, the conversation beginning sort of at top level, people within those teams are starting to feel more empowered to talk amongst themselves. I mean, Liam, you say that within your business a lot of what you do is kind of make sure that that kind of thing is on the table. Is that something that you think, being led by the top down, is that important?
I think, and just to echo the guys here thoughts, I think employee wellness is a big topic right now. I think more and more these days people are actually thinking about the way they treat individuals in their company, whether they're making sure they're happy coming to work and whether they're being challenged and they're learning as well. And I think mental wellness is one of those factors that can impact on employee well-being. I think it's fantastic what's happening in the employee well-being kind of space over the last couple of years, and I think mental health is one of those factors that's come in. I think to your point, however, about DD, I think we've always been pretty good at having a conversation with everybody who works in our company, and we're pretty good about asking if people are okay and being quite caring and supportive. And it's only really kind of more recently that we've kind of started to acknowledge that is a thing for us. It's what's part of our DNA, if you like. But there's 3 founders in our company, and we all get along quite well, and we try and lead by example. So we're asking each other how we're doing, we're trying to get feedback, and if somebody's not looking so good or needs to be a bit stressed, we're kind of trying to support and help each other. And that's kind of the company, I think, you need to create in this day and age. And by trying to create that kind of culture, you give empathy to the people in your company, therefore they start looking after each other, which is where you kind of want to be, I think.
Absolutely.
I think you really hit the nail on the head there in terms of the empathy and starting from the top. So I think, like, definitely with our portfolio companies, that the founders that struggle are the ones who just don't address it and don't really think about it and don't, like, even though they're burning out. And that's the scariest thing. You're looking at them and you're like, you aren't doing well at all. And like, I'm fine. And it's like, obviously as investors, we can't be your parent and we can't force you. We have to let you make your own decision. But there's definitely a strong correlation with those founders and their teams beneath them, because their teams don't feel like they can go and tell them, like, I'm feeling overwhelmed, like I'm feeling like there's too much, we're running too fast, I just need a mental health day or whatever. And it's almost like, if I go and say that, oh God, is he going to think that I'm not good at my job, or is she going to think that I'm not delivering or whatever? And I think, like, it starts at the top, and if you can't get that at the top, there's no way it's coming down. Like, I really don't think it's, yeah.
And it's probably easier in startup land where flat structures are more prevalent, because I certainly know on my first day we had a PT session upstairs and I was holding up Taz in a plank position, and it's pretty hard to be intimidated with your boss when you spent an hour workout session just sweating together. But I imagine that doesn't really happen in a corporate necessarily as much, because it can't. So, I mean, Christina, what advice do you go into corporates and give to a more sort of hierarchical, just by nature, structure when that sort of situation is prevalent?
So we don't work with corporates, we only work with startups and founders.
Okay.
But that hierarchy still exists. This idea of high performance, it is so complicated. It isn't a linear line, but support is really important within that. And this factor of loneliness comes again and again and again. I don't want to jump ahead, I know you want to talk about loneliness later, but loneliness comes through so strongly, but it's because we don't talk about these things. And even in the wider world, so outside of startups, we still don't feel comfortable saying, like you very bravely did, no idea actually, I'm obviously just feeling a bit shit. And we all need to get better at doing that.
And I felt better after a good
Absolutely, yeah, as you always will, because that's how our bodies are built. But actually making sure that we've got the right, we actually call them circles, but the right connections to have a conversation in a confidential setting. And we usually have coach facilitators so that founders can say, do you know what, I'm having a shit day and I can't work this out. And often you can't work it out because you're close to burnout. You can't work it out. Your brain can't operate under that. But if you can sit here and have a conversation and you say, well, actually, I had this problem and I did this, and another person says, well, have you tried this? Oh my God, hours together, solved. So, but it is about making sure that people within the team, you can't put a founder in with their team and run a circle. It doesn't work. Because the founders always tell us, we can't be that honest. Like, I'm stressing about hitting payroll.
Yeah.
I ain't going to tell my employees that.
No. It's something that we think that is a real issue. This whole kind of, it's not a hierarchy, it's really flat, but it isn't.
No, of course it isn't.
You're the P45 guy, people treat you differently. Right? You walk in, you say, that's how, still now it happens, we have a very open company, very open culture, but I'm the P45 guy. People watch the P's and Q's a bit. And so as a founder, you have to understand that and see it as a thing. But there is a job of keeping up the shop front when you can't meet payroll and you're shitting yourself and you don't know. So you have to keep up the front. And that, so last year, we Michael Acton Smith, the guy from Moshi Monsters and Calm, came to Get Ahead Festival. And I interviewed him on stage. And the whole theme was about this kind of idea of peeking behind the curtain of his career. And he was very open about how when he had a business called Moshi Monsters that started going down the pan, or suffering because kids didn't like it anymore, and how he had to maintain this shop front of everything's great to his investors and to the press and to his staff, and how the kind of gap between your public persona and where you really were was so challenging that ultimately I think that's why he set up a meditation app, was because of his experiences there. So there's a real challenge here, because the truth is, as a founder, you are putting yourself in an unreasonable position. It just is, right? And that's the nature of the job. So you can go, yeah, my mental health is really important. I'm going to really just meditate, but it's fucking stressful, and it probably isn't going to work, and it's a total nightmare from hell a lot of the time, right? Personally, I really like it, but
Any fans in the audience?
That's what happens. I mean, seriously, and if you go in thinking it's going to be not like that, you're a fool. But that's the downside. The upside is really great. But that's the up and the down. And so that is the price of taking the choice of becoming a founder, right?
But actually, the issue that we have is that we think that we're born with a skill set that makes us either successful or a success or a failure under pressure. This is a learned skill set.
Yeah,
Corporates have been teaching this for 3 decades. And actually taking what corporates would call high-performing team leadership training and dissecting that and putting it through a lens and relevant for founders, this is what has the real power to train people up, to give them the, like you talked about, this is actually a culture. You have a culture of openness and talking about in a very self-aware and empathetic way. That's a cultural thing, but you have to learn the skills first if you don't naturally have it. Lots of people don't. But it can all be learned.
I think that culture, which we always talk about culture being an output, not an input. You can't create a culture physically. That will actually be from the community that you create and how you converse with one another, really. But I do think that whilst I agree, you don't want to talk about shit, we're not going to make payroll. Your teams aren't stupid, and actually what people are looking for in jobs these days is not just great pay and a good job title. They're looking for purpose and they're looking for value, and putting the power back in their hands to give them that, and actually opening up a little bit more than might feel totally comfortable, I think is a really great thing. And you are always still protecting your teams. That is your number one job. There will be things that you don't want to say to them, but actually that's for the growth of the business and the benefit of their mental health. And you're right, that is sometimes where you take personally a bit of a hit. But that's where you have to make sure that you've got an awesome co-founder, board and advisory team, which is something that we say to our startups all the time. Make sure that you're going out to find those incredible advisors so that actually you can bounce off. And also mentoring. It's really bloody hard to find a mentor. I've actually just started with a new mentor. I've known her for 5 years, and I've only just realised that actually she's the perfect person for me. And she's ex-M&A, angel investor. I just thought, she's finance, that's not really my bag. But actually, we had a great meeting, and she messaged me saying she felt like I had mentored her. She understands why people of her generation reach out to people of my generation. And it really made me think, we need to do more of that and be more open. And actually, I had advice from one of our startups, who's also in the audience. I said, how do I ask her to be my mentor? She said, just ask her. I was like, that's really obvious. But actually admitting sometimes I'm not really sure how to deal with this situation, and with your team too, I think that helps to protect their mental health rather than being totally closed off.
I will say something that I've heard that works really well is, and have you guys heard of Sanctus?
Yeah.
They're amazing. I love Sanctus, and I was chatting with one of their founders, and I was asking like, how does that work? Exactly to your point, right? Because when you're the person that's managing the P&L and you know like, oh shit, I need to keep the lights on, or we're going to basically be eating ramen, how do you communicate that? And he was saying that actually they do these really great circles where like when you go into the room, you kind of leave all your titles at the door. And so obviously you're not going to bring in like the massive things, but it's just like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed at the moment because I have a lot on my plate and I don't really know how to prioritize. I don't really know what to do first or whatever. And everyone goes around that way and shares what they're feeling. But the point is that it's kind of a two-way, it's an empathy thing, right? Like you're building this culture where you can be open. I'm bringing my full self. Obviously, I'm not telling you like all the warts and all that's happening, but like you're not then holding me up in this pedestal that like, oh, I'm CEO, nothing's ever wrong. It's just like, I'm having a really off day. Like we're about to go fundraising and I'm freaking out. Like, do I even know the deck properly? Do I need to do whatever it is? But the point is just having that open, honest. Why are you laughing? Because you're
I had this exact moment earlier today where I was trying to explain to one of our team about how to sell a specific thing that we do, and he was like, "Oh, do you have a deck for that?" And I was like, "No, I need to build it because someone wants to buy it." And being totally honest about that actually, and I could easily dress it up and say, focus more on the fact that I'm not going to waste too much time building this until I know that there's market for it. And yes, that is good startup advice to a degree, but actually I was totally honest with him. Sorry, can't give you that deck, it's in my head.
There's a thing here, the thread about telling the truth, and I think this is the balance you've got to try and find. Is yes, you've got to maintain a certain shop front, but you can still do that and tell the truth, right? Now, I had a really difficult period in our company, my commercial company, a couple of years ago, and out the back of it, there's three things that saved my business. It'd been going for 13 years, and we had this, like, on our 13th birthday, it all went wrong, like some kind of cosmic number 13 thing. But the number one thing was about telling the truth, right? So it was without going into that, but telling the truth, and I've really tried to live by that, not just because of get ahead and mental health and well-being, but just in general. I'm telling you, it's a telling the truth. Also, in a world full of bullshit, being honest and truthful is a radical act, right? And it's so easy to do once you wrap your head around it, because it requires bravery. Because it is easy. You've got to jump over the gap, and there's a long way down. But I now. And I'm being very, very open about my mental health and my burnout and all that stuff, and I've blogged about it and talked about it on videos and talked to my pals. So everybody knows. And I'll go into new business meetings for my commercial company. So I'm selling, and I'll just say all this stuff. And we'll talk about Get Ahead and all the kind of purpose behind it. And within like 30 minutes, I'm having conversations with people I've never met before in the context of me selling them something, where they're telling me things that are really personal about them and saying, listen, we need to meet up and... so I'm having really genuine connections with people, like as a human, with another human, not a man trying to flog something to another person, right? And that has been a revelation, right? Because it's been really cool to have all these amazing relationships, and some of them turn into making money, and some of them don't, but who cares? Because ultimately, the fabric of that is really rewarding. And all I do is tell the truth. That's it, and I don't embellish it or go, woe is me, I've got depression, really hard. It's none of that, it's just the facts and whatever, and this is what we're doing, and people kind of respond to that. So it's like a really interesting, like, personal brand building thing, just tell the truth.
I think people are really missing the human connection.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to put this facade up all the time, I'm this like badass that's killing it. First of all, that's impossible, because like even when you think about high performance training, I think this is one of the things that founders also don't quite get, is they think like high performance is something that happens all the time. It's impossible. Even when you look at sprinters, they sprint, why don't they stop? I need a minute, right? Like you cannot be running at like 100% all the time, and if you're really good, you're going to have moments like when you're working on a project where you need to hit a deadline, where yes, all hands on deck, everything is going into it, but then you take your foot off the pedal, and anyone who thinks you run at high performance 100% of the time clearly has missed something, because as humans we cannot run at 100 all the time. It's just impossible. So I think it's like having those conversations, like you say, like just having those human connections, so that everyone in your team like understands that right now, the next quarter we need to do X, Y, and Z, but then actually, okay guys, we did it, or we didn't hit it, but let's just take a minute and just breathe. Like,
it's recuperation. If you're an athlete, exactly that. You don't sprint everywhere all the time.
Unless you're Usain Bolt, he probably does.
I do, obviously. But then you don't. But then what happens with this if you're a startup? Is this is the thing? You sprint from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Then you go on the piss, right? To some drinks thing, because it's really good because networking's happening. I need to meet some new investors, so I'll get on the source. That's what you do. And then you get to bed late, and then you don't sleep well because you've been drinking. And then you wake up early, you neck a load of caffeine, and then you start all over again. And then you go to a club and on the weekend, and you don't want to miss out on the socials. And then you're building your personal brand on Snapchat, and you don't ever switch off. And then suddenly you wake up one day feeling sad, and you can't work out why. But it's like it's a lifestyle choice. Right?
I think it's changing though, and I think those entrepreneurs are out there, but we need a voice and a platform to shout about it, to inspire others. Because I do think that Generation mindset is changing, and it goes back to that value and purpose, and actually looking for a reward day to day, that small rewards, that actually alcohol doesn't really cut it, and people are looking for something that's actually more physical, that human connection. And I do think, going back to your truth point, that and it also connects to people not being stupid, that actually if you get defensive or really worried about something, but the way of which you're talking about that doesn't come across right to your teams know that a defense mechanism is you trying to make the truth feel a bit easier. That's really what a defense mechanism is. And I do think that's connected very much to our mental health, and actually having that time to take a step back and think, rather than living a lifestyle which I do think comes from language. I think we need to get rid of the words hustle.
Yeah.
And we need
Yeah, I
to get bro culture that's not really a thing. I can't believe I just used the word bro, but
But it's the idea that you have to hustle and crush it. And I mean, my wife's just done a course with a thing called Digital Mums, where they train you how to become. She runs a little social media agency now, and the course about marketing and sales was called The Hustle. And I'm like, I've run a company for 20 years doing precisely this shit, and hustling is a very thin slice of what goes on. There's a strategic intent to get a certain type of customer and then provide value to them. That's not hustling, right? So if you run around London giving out business cards, that's hustling in my mind. And that's very, very, it's a big waste, well, it's not necessarily a waste of time, but it's a very inefficient use of your time and energy. And I think this comes back to it, if you actually treat your energy as a resource you invest, right? So if you're burning money left, right and centre, you wouldn't do it, right? If you're burning energy left, right and centre because you're hustling and crushing it and doing all this other stuff, it runs out. And that's why, so all this stuff is a choice, but often people get into it subconsciously. They just don't realise just that everyone else is doing it, so I have to do it. And you perceive the way the world is, but that's not the way the world really is. It's just a cook-up from, Instagram or something.
Absolutely. I mean, Pia's got a really good question on this topic, so I wanted to ask it. Do leaders, teams who feel safe to be authentic perform less highly because there's internal and external pressure to perform and prove their worth?
Who do you feel safe or don't feel safe?
No, Pia, you.
Me. Well, just thinking ahead, so thinking about what would happen if all of your dreams come true, and people are equipped with the tools and the resources to share how they're feeling and also to take care of how they're feeling and each other's feelings, would we all see less amazing companies and less amazing products and services because people are feeling so safe to be themselves that they're not, hustling?
I don't think so.
I
don't think so at all. Because I feel like when I'm feeling really happy, I totally deliver. I jump out of bed, literally. My team are usually like, oh my god, Keji, go to the gym. I've hurt myself a bit, so I can't go to the gym. So I'm literally this ball of oh my god, we're gonna do it. And all these ideas. But no, I feel like when I feel like, and I was just having this chat with my colleague earlier, when I feel like I can be honest and say, so. I was talking to Ode, and I was saying that last week, I'm not usually one who has any kind of challenges. I kind of run. But I woke up feeling totally overwhelmed because we're planning this retreat at the moment. And I basically couldn't breathe, and I burst into tears. I called my sister up, and I was like, I can't breathe, what is happening? And she was like, oh my god, talk to me off the ledge. And then when I got into the office today, everyone was like, oh, how was your weekend? You haven't been in for a while. I was like, guys, I felt totally overwhelmed. This retreat is really freaking me out because by this time last year, I'd done X, Y, and Z. And they were just like, that's fine, do the best you can do. Is there anything we can help you with, blah, blah, blah. And actually, just being able to say that, I felt really good because I felt like I'd given them context so that if a ball does drop during the retreat, they were aware that I'd already said, oh, these are the areas I'm struggling. And actually one of them was like, oh, do you want me to help you with this thing? Or should I bring this along? And I was like, that's a great idea. Yeah, you do that. You're in charge of that now. And then so actually being able to share that, I don't think makes me feel any way I can rest on my laurels or whatever. In fact, it makes me want to do even better because I know my team is supporting me and I'm just together we're going to be like Avengers. We're going to assemble and we're going to totally kill it. And that's kind of how I think. And I think I think you shouldn't be afraid of having your team be able to be authentic. I think you'd be surprised at how much better the quality of output will be just because they feel safe to be able to be themselves and they're with a team that care about them and support them. But that's just my, sorry for all the references.
Are you going to be wearing Avengers costume at the retreat?
I really wish I could. I might, maybe Scarlett Johansson's number, but we are getting someone warm, so me and Black Leather might be a challenge. But I'll let you know. I can be pasted. Watch my Twitter and I'll put a page on it.
So I just lost my train of thought. I think what I was going to say was I think pressure can be a good thing. I think you can use pressure in your company. I think sometimes people do the best work when they've got an idea of when something needs to be done. And if you don't have that kind of framework or structure in place on your project, I think that's the point in time when things maybe can just go on and maybe things don't get done. But I think that pressure has to be used in the right places, in the right kind of circumstances. But if you create the kind of, if you have a happy team, if people are bouncing out of bed, like I actually think people can come refreshed with the best ideas, be quite innovative, and actually help you solve problems as a founder. Rather than if they're under pressure, then probably making bad decisions. But that's just my opinion. I mean, we've spoken to a couple of consultants recently about the hustle, the kind of like sales process, and they're talking about work through the night, get that pitch out, win that pitch, and we're just like, well, no, it doesn't really work. I mean, we didn't win the pitch, but at the same time, we're not going to work through the night because
See, I have a real beef with this because you're a creative company, right? And anybody running a company needs to be creative, strategic, and ideas. So how can you do that if you've not slept and you're under extreme pressure and workload and you're feeling this, like, whatever it is? Now, I can say again, to run a startup or any kind of company is a whole series of like endless amounts of work, and it's really difficult and pressure, and I like that. But you can make it worse for yourself, and that's the way you make it worse for yourself. It's like the game is hard. Right? That's the game. So don't make it harder than it needs to be. And working all night to do a creative pitch, what? Just stupid. And if you think about it for longer than 30 seconds, it's obvious it's a stupid idea. But there's a whole load of people around here who are like, I'm on here, I'm staying up all night and I did the pitch and I'm doing more work today. And I mean, again, that's just fine, but you're not going to be good at your job. Right? The stated, even if you're an employee, if you are a creative and that's what you want to do, and you're living like that, you're going to be worse at it. So it's, so my dream isn't to have everything like come by R and be really nice. I have very, very, very ambitious targets for the Get Ahead in particular, and we are, I'm telling you, we are making a mountain out of a very little amount of resource, right? That's really hard, but we're trying to do it in a way that isn't completely killing everybody that's involved. Right? Now that's a balance, because I'm not entirely sure we got that right, but there you go.
And I think balance is key there. And I mean, does that kind of answer your question, Pia?
I was hoping you would
Sorry,
say something.
I'm trying. I'm really trying. I think it's really interesting because you use the word performance, and we have a really strong association that performance means this idea of killing it. Fucking hate the bravado in our industry. Honestly, it's not healthy in the slightest, as you have pointed out beautifully. I just wanted to support that point.
Good.
But we religiously bring this idea of performance back to pro athletes. So if I used to be a rower, I still am a rower actually, but I used to be quite a good rower, and I wasn't even a pro rower, and I used to have access to a nutritionalist, a conditioning coach, a coach, basically a physio, and if we wanted it, we could have psychologists.
Dreamy.
And this wasn't even pro. Now, if we look at pro athletes, this is how we dissect performance. It's a clinical framework that we build what we do on top of, because that's what delivers performance. You can't just, in a linear way, go, well, it's all about being able to run fast. It's not. Mental health is a massive part of it. Empathy is a massive part of it. Self-awareness, awareness of other people. There are so many different parts. It's like this framework that we have to become aware of, explore, and then build a skill set around. And no, in answer to your question directly, does it mean that we all slow down and get worse? Absolutely not. Because so much of this stuff, come back to your point, is identifying what is really important. 3 goals today, 3 goals this week, bang, that they're on doing. Ignore all that shit. Social media, whatever. let's focus on the big things. And when people focus on the big rocks, that's when you can perform really, really well.
Yeah, sorry. The thing you made me think of, the other thing that often, I've just written a post about mindset, and the whole premise of it is the last couple of years I've been really working on learning a lot, almost studying with philosophy, psychology, what have you, for my own personal benefit. And it happens to be really helpful for work because if you understand yourself better, you're a better boss and creator of value. My point is that I realise actually you can work on your psychology, on your psyche, like you can work on your physiology. Okay, so physical health is completely accepted that you can go do strength and conditioning training down the gym, working out, and you get a six-pack. Everybody's accepted that. Then we go mental health. Oh bloody hell, what is it? Oh, this is kind of amorphous blob of like I don't know what. Let's go and see a counsellor. But actually, if you think about it the same way, if you can work your mind, your mindset, in the same way you can work your body by studying, I would say, right? And so that could be through experts that you've got on tap, or you could work with people. But there's a whole bucket load of information out there. I listen to Audible now, thanks to Dell, who got me onto it. But for $7.99 a month plus all the other bits I buy, I'm just on it all the time, right? Consuming information. I'm finding this incredible lifeline to I'm 45 now, it took me 43 years to work this out. But I'm now learning how to be a much better human being, and husband and dad and boss and all this other stuff. But it's all there, right? And friend, indeed. Yeah, indeed, I'll try. But all these things are just, but this is, the point is, you sometimes, we don't talk about that, just culturally we don't talk about it. You go to school, you go to uni, and then that's it, you're done. Right? And then actually, if you, with all this sort of freely, cheaply available content, if you actually treat it like study, and that's how you improve your mental health, that's how you avoid stress and burnout, is by working on your mindset like you would do your physique. So like getting a mental six-pack. So you're resilient because you've got tools that come from stoic philosophers that help you cope with the fact someone's been a dickhead. That's what it boils down to. So you don't get stressed out about it, you let it all go and no big deal. And so that I would say that's something that, as we were talking, it's like there is a choice there. That's a choice you have to make, and that's on you.
So here's a question. Everybody deals with their own mental health in a very different way, right?
Yeah.
We're all individuals, so everybody comes at it from a different angle. If we appreciate that you can train your brain in exactly the same way as you can train your body, how do we, if I'm a founder or whatever, I want to bring in a wellness initiative into my business, how do I ensure that my initiative, what should that look like? Because I'm aware that everybody within my team is going to need certain things. Some might need counselling, some might need half an hour out, some might need a PT session in the morning. What do I do?
I mean, and from my perspective, I think thinking of things as an initiative is less helpful. You really want it to become cultural. But that starts with understanding. So yes, you're 100% right. I'm sure everyone on the panel would agree that our needs are different, and actually our solutions are very different because we're all different, right? But being able to understand and be more self-aware and understand what your triggers are, so that you can put a separation between stimulus and response, which is the foundations of good communication and good influencing skills. To be able to allow people to understand the basics and upskill, and then allow them to go on their own route, I think is a good solid basis. You have a question for me?
Yes, hi.
I've actually solved that problem.
Oh yeah? Oh, pray tell.
I had to say something. I built an on-demand platform for if you want dog sitting, if you want a yoga class, if you want house cleaning or a boxing class. It's all up to you. All in one platform because of that exact reason. I took 2 years talking to employees, and the reason was everyone's different. You can't just give someone a generic initiative or program. Yoga at 8 PM on a Wednesday, or you've got to let people define what well-being means to them, because what makes me less stressed and happier is different to what makes you less stressed and happier. And if your company can provide that, then you can go a little bit further. Not solve it, it's not a panacea. There are lots of different avenues, but technology can help.
We had that. We had that discussion with launching our wellness initiative for the accelerator. Both my co-founder and I have worked at accelerators for quite a while. We've never seen something like that be done before. And we knew that the kind of stuff we were talking about, like yoga and meditation, wasn't everybody's cup of tea, right? And we also knew that that was just one way of conceptualizing mental health and conceptualizing humanity in tech. And we made that very clear to the startups up front, that we are not asking you to take our values, this is our values as a business, but we hope that you can learn from us and we can inspire something within you that means that actually when you go on to hire your teams, this is prevalent in your mind. And you can then conceptualize it in whatever way works for you. And we actually did have a few of the startups who were a bit like, I don't want to get involved in that, get involved, who are now seeing our nutritionists personally, who are meditating once a week, who were people who would never have even considered that. And actually it also made us realise that when you open doors to people and you just get to experience something new, and it's free, and it's upstairs, you don't really have to put yourself out there, you might start to think about things in a different way. And like we said earlier, it's leading by example. We have to remember to take our own advice. In fact, Emma and I had a great conversation last week where Emma was sat there really stressed.
Prepping for this event.
And almost missed a yoga session for it. And then went, this is ridiculous.
What am I doing?
And actually being able to say that and you saying that out loud to anyone that was listening was like, oh yeah, you're so right, I should go do yoga. And that's what we've seen happen off the back of trialing something we had no idea how it was going to go down.
I think the only thing I was going to say is if you want to try and work out how an initiative is going or whether it's being well received, just ask your team, get feedback. So we have, you should be having regular one-to-ones with people who work for you, and those conversations are like, feedback, things to look out for. Actually, how's it going for you? Have you got any feedback on, are you enjoying your time working for us, or me, whatever? So ask that feedback. Some people don't like giving feedback in that kind of situation, so there's a couple of tools that you can do anonymous feedback as well. We just put in a tool called Office Vibe into our company since October, and we get anonymous feedback. In fact, we've just done a survey specifically about the founders. What do you think the founders should be doing more of, less of? What are we good at? What are you not so good at? What is the company doing well? And we're getting some really good insights. But if we were to put something, we have I think we have a £20 a month wellness allowance. People can use for whatever they want, really, whatever keeps them fit, happy, and healthy. But then if we ask people about benefits, if we wanted to find out, we just ask people about that tool. Is this working out for you? Rate it out of 10, and if it's good, then great. If not, we'll get suggestions back. But it's just, you just need to offer teams.
We've used that. We used to use a platform called Tiny Pulse, which is quite good. But yeah, it's useful. One thing I'm just going to say is, oftentimes well-being becomes this talk about yoga and meditation and nutrition. And listen, I do yoga, I meditate, I'm trying to eat well. Although we did go to meat liquor earlier. So, 50-50 at the moment. But that's kind of, to my mind, that's the baubles on the Christmas tree. Yeah?
Absolutely.
You need a good tree. So here's my 2P about how you create good well-being at work. Really clear direction for the business, really clear value proposition, an organisation chart, clear job roles, right, for a start. Because if you don't get all that stuff right, it's really stressful for everybody, right? Because people don't know what they're doing and they get stressed because they don't think they're going to do it wrong.
And ability to know how to progress. So we get people to stay longer than 2 years.
And so you can autonomy, mastery, purpose and all that stuff. It's but if you get that right, then people know what they're doing. Because if you get that wrong and you give them free yoga on a Thursday, it's like, well, I'm stressed out of my mind because I don't know if I'm doing my job right, and you give me fucking yoga. That doesn't work. So it's and I think this is to my mind, that's that. And there's some of this stuff about truth telling. There's a concept called radical candor. There's a woman called Kim Scott, and I'd really recommend watching her videos. And I'm not read the book, but the concept we're trying to embed in our company, and it's yeah, it's really good. It's about truth telling and having that as a baseline, but not being rude to people because I'm telling you the truth. I hate your shoes. It's like that's not what we're talking about. It's about kind of what they say, caring, basically like compassionate sort of direct feedback, basically. But that is more important for, I would think, all those than all that other stuff. That other stuff's good, but it's not as good as all that having the basics right.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think for us, what we start is like when we invest in new founders, as part of onboarding, I'll spend time with them. I get them or ask them, I give them a book called Stand Out and ask them to take this assessment. And the whole point is like you get to figure out from this assessment like what your key strengths are, because oftentimes you stack up your week doing things that don't give you energy, that actually drain your energy.
Yeah.
So then by the end of the week you feel shit, you feel stressed, you feel like out of sorts, and then it's like, oh, come in for a drop in yoga. It's like, no, I feel awful. I just want to go home and drink because I feel terrible, or something like, I don't know, not everyone drinks, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But doing this, and I do it myself as well, like if I'm looking back at the end of the week or at the end of the day and I'm like, oh, why do I not feel so great today? I'll think, okay, how have I stacked up my day? I get energy from meeting people, and then I'll figure out, I've just spent 8 hours in the office. Well, no wonder I feel crap. So then tomorrow, I'm going to rejig my diary so that I'll stack it up and start the day meeting people. So then I'm super energized, get to the office, like, okay, now I can work through those 100 emails that I've been putting off. It's fine, because I'm like super energized now. So I think like starting with that is a really good, and that also fits in with like, what your job role is, what are you doing, like what's expected of you, like what are your deliverables, like all these things, like all this clarity is really needed, so that like when you think about your energy, it's your energy balance, how am I spending it, and am I clear on what I should be doing to hit my goals or whatever's required of me. And then I think also that's really important when you're building your teams, because then it's like, okay, right, everyone's done their standout. This is the strengths we have in the team. So I was adding to my team a couple of months ago, and we've all done our standouts as a team, and I know what my strengths are. So I was really thinking, okay, like what questions should I be asking to try and kind of unearth what this person's strengths are, because I want someone who's balancing me. Otherwise, someone else who's exactly like me, well, we're both going to want to do the same thing, and then it's like all the shit tasks aren't going to get done, and then it's like we're both going to be looking at each other like, why aren't you doing the task? I don't want to. They shouldn't. I feel like awful doing them. So really thinking about that and thinking about how you build your week and how you're spending your time is a really good way to like be thinking about your mental well-being from another standpoint from the outset.
I think we talked a lot about pressure earlier, and I think that as a founder or director or whatever, a business, it all stops with you. Everything comes into you, and you do take on a lot of responsibility. But one of the best things I think you can do is actually sit down, like you say, and work out what am I good at. Running a workshop and meeting with the team. What am I less good at? Well, I don't know, finance maybe. What's creating value for the business potentially, and then focusing your time on that. What makes me happy? That's really important. What do I like doing? Like, if I like going to yoga, make time for yoga, build it into your schedule. Anything you're not so good at, I suggest you try and get something on board or outsource it, because you'll find something much better than you at the stuff you're really
and
bad
who
at.
loves doing it as well. Like,
Exactly that.
As soon as you acknowledge to yourself that I'm not great at everything, there's some things I'm really quite shit at, then you kind of maybe hopefully we just go a little bit, and you can just play to your strengths.
It should also help to prevent a bottleneck. You talk about this, that once you've identified the gaps within the team and who you need to hire, it's giving them the autonomy to make a final decision too. Because as a founder, you can't say yes to everything, because you will never ever grow. And I think that's really hard for people, actually hard on mental health, to let go and trust, as much as you trust and love your team, but to prevent that from happening. And I've seen hundreds of startups go down the pan because of it. And I think anybody who has a startup here or is thinking about it, to constantly be thinking about, when you think of your co-founder, you think of what skill sets do they pick up on that you might not be so strong on. Every single person you hire is exactly the same, and you should always hire people that are better than you.
Great, thank you. Well, I really want to come on to a couple of these questions, because I'm very aware that people in the audience are going to be wanting to ask them. But just one final question, and I think it's a really, really important question. It's all very well and good talking about mental health awareness and supportive teams, but there may well be people who are really struggling either with their mental health or just struggling in general, who aren't in supportive teams. Like, what advice do you guys individually have for those people who don't feel like they are in an environment where they can really bring these things up?
So, I mean,
No, go for it.
I mean, there is a lot of, if you identify as you think you probably are having a problem, then mind.org is absolutely amazing. They have free resources which will help get further down, and they also have free counselling. But if that's for like, really think you can identify with a mental health challenge. But really, I would say it doesn't have to be in the workplace. Pick somebody that you know well, that you think has a good balanced view on the world, you know, someone who's quite good at working, quite empathetic. And we can all probably think of someone in our lives that's quite good at that. And just make a point of saying, I need to sit down with you and talk about something specific. Don't do it over a drink in the pub, this is not a good idea. And just start the conversation, because truly, a bit like having a good old cry, starting the conversation is a weight off your mind. It doesn't matter that they don't know, or they're not trained, they're not mental health first aid trained like I am or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just having the initial conversation is a good starting point.
I think I would say to remember that sensitivity is a beautiful trait, and it's also an incredibly strong characteristic. And like you said, to go and find that support network elsewhere, and to be proud of the fact that you might have been feeling sensitive for whatever shape or form, and learn how to build on that and improve and grow your character to feel stronger and better than yourself. I think there's too much focus on sensitivity being negative, and actually some of the best people in work and in friends and in life are those that realise that that's part of their personality and own it.
Great. So I really want to come on to Anonymous's question, because I think this is a really good one to start off. So I'm afraid of taking the leap of setting up my own business. How do I overcome this feeling?
I spend every day helping entrepreneurs do that. Shall I
Yes,
start?
please do.
Talk to your customer. Go out and buy the book, The Mom Test, and read that book, and then religiously go and talk to your ideal target customer about 25 times. And you will learn so much from interviewing that customer in a mom test style. That will make sense. Mom test, as in American mom.
The mum.
Mom test.
Like the mother, M-O-M.
So for instance, if you're going to pitch to your mum, what language do you need in order for your mum to understand what this thing is that you're building, and then you're validating your proposition each time you do that.
The idea is that your mum will always lie to you. Do you think my idea was a good idea? Yes, dear, it's fabulous. That's exactly the principle behind it, and this book teaches you how to interview people without saying, do you like my idea? Because everybody will always lie to you. It's an amazing way to validate for yourself. As you said, this journey is not easy. It's brilliant, but it's not easy. Just for the record, that's someone who's had PTSD because of it. It's brilliant, but it's not easy. So we all have to be really sure that we're on the right track. And just because that idea might not be great, you'll probably find one that's 45 degrees to the right that your customers are like, give me this! That's the way you want to go. But Mom Test will teach you how to do that.
And back in 2000, when I was thinking of setting up a company, my now wife, because she wasn't my wife then, said, what's the worst that could happen? You should get a job if it fails.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. It's like you can build it up into a big thing, but you know, it's just a thing. You know, you have a go and see what happens.
Actually, a woman called Imogen, who's Ned for StateZero and also the CEO of Cargo Downstairs, we were having a really open chat about it, and she said, I just always remind myself that there's always dog walking in California. It's like, yeah, no, there is actually. There's always dog walking.
But in some ways, that is a joke, I guess, but it creates some levity.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think gets missed in all these conversations, like, yeah, you know, careful empathy. It's like, yeah, but in some ways, having a sense of humour is possibly the biggest get out of jail free card you can possibly have running a company. And if I'm feeling stressed, I go onto Reddit and I look at stupid memes. Seriously, that's what I do. It's like, lol. Yeah, I mean, seriously, that's what I do. And it's not like, and you know, or listen to some very loud dance music when I'm driving home. That's my you know, that's what I like to do. But so sort of levity is basically, I think, quite important. Because, and again, like, it's also bloody serious. You know, all of it is, and then you get into mental health, and that's really serious. And then, oh, fucking hell, look, surrounded by loads of really serious subjects. But concentrate some lightness and play and fun, and fuck it didn't work, go and get a dog walking job. You know, but yeah, and again, the line I've been sort of referring back to is that, you see on Facebook these people sharing 10 things that palliative care nurses have told you, that the dying tell you on their deathbed. Do you know what? None of them, nobody on their deathbed ever says, I really crushed that funding round. You know, that's not what is important when you're staring death in the eye. So maybe just live your life like that. You know, don't worry about it, just like get on with it. If it all fucks up, so what? You lost all your money. You can earn more money.
Yeah.
I do agree, but you have spent years getting to that level of awareness, and our entrepreneurs are really prone for putting our self-esteem directly on the success of our business idea.
But I would say that's not self-esteem, that's your ego, right? And I'm not saying that's wrong.
I disagree.
Well, no, I think it absolutely is from my own experience, right? And I think there's a thing here of your self-esteem, the success of your company and you are not the same thing.
I agree, but that's not how people feel, and that's why.
Sure, that's their ego. And I'm not judging that, I'm not saying that's bad or they're crappy people, but that's what that is. Right? So it's your sense of self tied up in the sort of how you all feel you're constructed, perceived by the outside world. What's that? It doesn't exist, it's a construction, it's a fantasy. You don't have to, I mean, I've been reading lots of bloody books, and it doesn't get very far into reading about sort of, I don't know, read The Power of Now, read some bloody Gabor Mate books, you know, get into this sort of stuff, and one's ego, Ryan Halliday has written a book, Tim Ferriss's mate, called The Ego is the Enemy. Right, I have a big ego, right? I went to art school for a while. Being an artist, you need to have a big ego. It's completely fucked me up throughout my life, and I nearly lost my wife and family about 2 or 3 years ago because of my ego. I've had a series of catastrophic events in the last 5 years, so trust me, it doesn't get any better. But seriously, the whole point is my getting over my sense of I am this person, I have this business, and I'm really holding it. It's like this kind of bullshit defence mechanism. Once I get over that, my life's like loads easier, and my business performs better, more creative, more balanced, all that sort of stuff. It's your ego, right? And again, read the chimp paradox. It's all this stuff. So I think there's a whole thing here. Yes, you know, I get it. I've lived that life, but I think there's a whole. If you identify too closely with it, it won't do you any favours.
But I think there is a difference between having an ego that may get in the way and placing your own self-esteem on your own business, because I can imagine as a first-time founder that is such an easy mistake to make. So how do you stop that? How do you not place your own self-esteem on the success of your business?
So we have a tool called the belief wall, where it becomes this like little thing that you always have in the back of your notebook or whatever you carry around with you, and it is a bit like building yourself and reminding yourself that, okay, today might have been shit, but you know what, I did that well, I did that well, and with that, trying to acknowledge each day things that have gone well. Because this is a habit, we have to create habits, cultures around this, building ourselves up and being stronger within, and that sounds very fluffy. And yes, I am a yogi, but that seems a bit fluffy for me. This stuff matters.
I really agree with that, by the way. We call it positive focus. Del and I will be very into that. But at the end of the day, very simple trick to make yourself your day magically better. Write down all the things that went well.
Yeah.
All right? And trust me, like I said, I've had some really shitty times in the last few years. I'm properly all going to end. There's always something that's gone well. Do you know what I mean? Like I found a new tune that's really cool. That's good.
Or
right?
even just how you dealt with something.
Yeah, like, look, just like it was sunny, you know, like it's something, and again, this is the point, it's like finding the positive. And that's not about being delusional if it is bad. It's just going to get yourself into a positive frame of mind. The other trick I've learned is journaling. Yeah, so it's the start at the end of the day. This is free counselling, right? Because it's just counselling to yourself. And I've got really into this, particularly the last 2 or 3 months, every day. So just write in a journal. And get a decent journal that's a nice book so it feels valuable. And go somewhere and just turn your phone off and write. And it's incredible what comes out of your brain. I mean, really, I've had some right ideas that just came out of nowhere, giving myself half an hour every morning just to write. And then at the end of the day, so that's point one. And if it's out of your brain, it's not rattling around. And that's the counselling bit. You consult yourself. Yeah? And point two is what you just described, positive focus. So at the end of the day, write down the stuff that went well. Because it gives you, and often, I mean, even last week, things are going pretty well. But I got home and I was feeling really low and just fed up and, thought I'm going to go to bed. And I thought, just write down what went well. And suddenly all these things came out of my memory that I'd completely forgotten about. From all the way through the day, they were really good. Like, I had a good lunch and was supposed to be mate, and that went really well. God, we won that contract, and all these great things that you just forget about because you're tired and what have you. But those two things, I'd say, just that's magic tricks. Like, journal and write down what went well at the end of the day.
I think it's also good to learn about your team and how they like to be told they're doing well, and with your co-founder as well, co-founders. So Katie and my co-founder, had this conversation very early on because we'd seen it go wrong in teams before. And what we quickly learned is that Katie doesn't like to be told that she's doing well. But if I don't tell her she's doing well, she's pissed at me. And I do not need feedback, but if you don't give it to me, I'm heartbroken. And actually, we're kind of the same, but we're approaching it in really different ways. And I think that's because we have been brought up to need positive reinforcement. School is positive reinforcement. You're always looking for that grade to know you've achieved. And so when we realised that worked so well with one another, we were like, okay, so let's have that conversation with the team too. And we're all different. Some people want that feedback verbally, some people don't, some people just want a nod in the right direction. And that's, I think, opens up the conversation about things that aren't necessarily mental health as a label, but actually it all contributes to it.
I think as soon as you label it, it becomes this thing.
Yeah, agreed.
And then actually, what is journaling? Is that mental health? Yeah. But it's not mental health,
That's why we always talk about performance and well-being, because you can't separate them really.
No.
Yeah, well, I have this thing about personal development and professional development is the same thing. There's you. There's no line where you suddenly switch off being that version to another version.
There isn't a line between mental and physical health, really.
No, there isn't.
Mental and physical are the same.
Yeah, and exactly that. I mean, chronic stress depresses your immune system, and then you get ill. And that's how it works.
Yeah.
So I know we've all talked about lots of things, but what I will say is another thing that you might find helpful is actually just go and volunteer with less fortunate people, because that's something I do every week, and someone had told me to do it, and I was like, I don't have time, why would I do that? I'm so busy. But there's nothing like so I volunteered at a homeless shelter, and after 3 hours with people who genuinely do not have a roof over their head, don't have anything, and they're still kind of chatting to you with sunny disposition, you leave with a newfound perspective, like, actually, I have a really nice house, I've got really nice clothes on my back, I've got a job to go to, and all those little things. So like, even though we're so pushed for time in this generation and we're doing a million things, I'd really, really say, like, try giving up your time to give to someone else, because there's nothing like shifting perspective from you onto someone else to just make you like open up in a totally different way, and you'll learn something new. That's one. And secondly, when you were talking about like if you're the person who said about being afraid to jump, the two questions, well, you only live once, so you might as well try. And also, like, what would happen if this time next year you're still having this conversation? Like, how will you feel then? Because if you'll feel pissed off, like, why have I wasted a year? Just try it now. There's like, you're not going to lose anything, and like, maybe do it alongside your full-time job if you can't commit fully, but at least take one step to trying, because if you don't, you're just going to ask yourself, like, why? Like,
I think, well, we talked about the impact on your mental health of going out by yourself and being a founder, but it can have a hugely positive effect as well. Setting up your own company can be massively empowering. It can actually build your confidence, it can help you discover what you really are passionate about. I used to work for a large corporate where mental health was any kind of those kind of conversations was completely off the table, because of the sign of weakness of being in the city. But for me, it was an easy decision to leave there and go and do my own thing. And then I look back now and I don't think I'd probably be sat here or even in this room if I hadn't done that in terms of confidence and actually knowing what I really am passionate about and enjoy talking about. So yes, it is a big leap of faith. I don't think anybody can deny that going that way is something big, but the upside is brilliant. Just to have that kind of, I don't want to say control, but be empowered and be able to make small little changes and put things in place and see them fail and learn from that and then adjust your model and keep going back and keep going back.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm really sorry, we're only going to have time for one more question, but I know what it's like when you're sitting in the audience, you're desperate to ask a question. Is anyone absolutely desperate to ask their question? Yes, Christiana, go for it.
I guess, based on discussions, I wanted to know, like, for you, how much people hang on to other people's perception of what success is or how they should be handling things, and how that's incorporated into their willingness to be open about what they're going through. You know, do you think that it's, you know, people don't feel like they can open up because they feel that, you know, as you were saying, people are put up on a pedestal, and so therefore they don't feel comfortable with speaking or opening up about their experiences in order to diffuse that stress?
I don't know. I think the first thing I think is part of the challenge, I think, with a lot of founders or individuals, teams today is we don't actually give ourselves much space. And by space, I mean space to ask yourself hard questions. So I'm fortunate, I have an older brother, and when I was turning 30 a few years ago, he was like, I'm going to give you life lessons. I was like, I didn't ask you for any. And he was like, one of the things I'll say to you is like, ask yourself hard questions. Like, who are you? What is success to you? And not who you think you should be to other people. So like when I was growing up, I thought like success was like having like a penthouse and like a G5 and all this amazing stuff. I was a very materialistic person and I didn't think I'd like the old me. But now success to me is like being able to play tennis twice a week, and being able to like be in a role where I totally have impact and I have total autonomy and like I get to just create whatever I want within reason. But these are questions I'm still asking myself. So I think it's like, give yourself space to ask yourself these hard questions, because without it, you're basically going to just imbibe what society and what Instagram and social media tells you. Yeah. And then when you achieve it, you don't feel like you've made it because it was never your definition of success in the first place. Or, I mean, like I'm African descent and our parents have a very clear definition of success is, right? Like, you're going to be, I was a barrister, I hated it. And my father still to this day is like, you're a barrister. And then he's like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. But now like, we're having this conversation where I'm like, but this is what success means to me. And this is what how great I feel when I really deliver. And he's like, oh, cool. And it's just being able to explain to other people, like, and help them understand what success means to you. And that might also challenge them to ask themselves, like, is how I've been defining success all this time the right way? I don't know. Like,
and how you also can sometimes take that and project it onto yourself or onto others, and understand that projection really is a notion that's happening every day in life. For instance, I know we've had this discussion before, I have always had a hang up about my age because I'm young, and I've always been afraid of speaking up that I'm 25, and this is my second business, and I've done quite a lot in that space of time, and I should be really bloody proud of it. But I've always been so terrified of saying that because I think people are going to judge me for being young. And actually, I'm starting to come to the realization that I am projecting that onto every single person I meet in case they're instantly looking at that. Maybe that's why I haven't got rid of these greys, keeps aging. But actually, what I need to remember is that I'm always going to be the best person I can be and do the best that I can be with incredible people. And as long as I remember that, then I don't really care if they have an issue with it. And to be honest, they probably don't. And I do think that comes into the whole concept of having the courage and understanding what step you want to take next.
It's actually understanding your own mind. I think this is the thing. This is perhaps what we about the ego. It's like kind of there's a book called The Chimp Paradox, and I really recommend it. It was the book that helped me get on this path actually a few years ago. And you are not your mind, and you're not your emotional response, and you can have a choice over that, how you impact that. And I think to that point, you're projecting. You don't know. You can't put what you think is in everyone's heads onto you. And you're too young, too old, too this, too. Everyone's got a quirk, in a given situation. So you're just kind of learning how to manage your own mind. And that's the empowering thing, actually. If you can get better at that. It's an ongoing process really for everybody. The other thing I just want to chuck in, there's the idea that there's normal people and then mentals, right? And then it's like, well, and actually when you get into it, there's yeah, of course there's some people with serious illnesses, that are mental health illnesses. In the same way there's serious illnesses, like you might break your back, right? But then there's many shades of grey, and I think this idea that there's normal is a complete myth. Everyone's got their kinks and quirks and fears and upsets, and I don't care who you are, like everybody does. And actually one of the things about having set up the festival is you have all these conversations with people, and then you just see it all the time. Everyone's got their little quirk. So actually, everyone's muddling through. Everyone's got their own fears and worries and what have you. It's just that's the way humans are. And if you don't have that, you're the weirdo, right? Because everybody does. So actually, if you accept that's the way it is, accept that you're this quirky, sort of irrational being, start to be kind to yourself that that's the way it is, because that's the way it is, and then you're at least on the right footing to experience all the ups and downs of startup and entrepreneurial life without the unnecessary drama, which is what got me burnt out. I think really, I was just handling all the information badly. Something good happened, stress. Something bad happened, stress. Stress. So that for me was the real turning point.
And then if you try to measure what success looks like as when you're in your own business or something. So a couple of years ago I sat down with a mentor and I started talking about what we did as a company. I was like, if we do this and we can achieve this and we can do this. And when you start up a company, there's a kind of perception, maybe it's a Zuckerberg thing, about there being a pot of gold and the end of the rainbow, and everybody's got to work towards that pot of rainbow. And the mentor just said to me, when we ask you a question, what about if you couldn't retire? So what you're doing today, you're going to keep doing for the rest of your life. Are you doing the right things? And it was just a bit of a light bulb moment for me. It says, okay, so yes, we do need to have a vision. We need someone taking the company and get on board. But you've got to enjoy the journey. You've got to enjoy playing tennis twice a week. You've got to enjoy the kind of process that you're going to go through. Because if you keep trying to attain something and judge yourself against that, I think you're going to come unstuck.
Yeah.